Greetings, my friends, and welcome to the Paula Gordon Show, conversations with people at the leading edge. I'm Paula. Businesses and their politicians have argued for years that environmentalism is bad for business. Greenwash has been the token response. Industrialist Ray Anderson says that's nonsense, that working with nature is a competitive advantage, and he has the numbers to prove it.
The figure that I focus on is the throughput of the industrial system. I'm talking about not talking about my plant, but the whole ball of wax, the whole industrial system. The throughput, the metabolism, if you will, of the industrial system. Only about 3% of that throughput has any value 6 months later. 3%. Your laptop computer, for example, weighs what, 7, 8, 9 pounds? Mm-hmm. Probably 40,000 pounds of stuff was processed to distill your 7, 8, or 9 pounds of working parts. So you've left 99.9% of the stuff, in a waste pile somewhere. Tailings at the mine, energy that went out the smokestack. In a zillion places, there's waste in the system. So when you look at where we are, that's the starting place. It ought to be really very, very easy to cut that waste in half.
That looks like opportunity every page you turn.
It's all expensive. I mean,
it's all money. Yeah, it's money and it's pollution and it's bad in every respect. And yet our system somehow says, well, that's normal. Well, it's very abnormal if you stop and think about it. Who would want to run a waste-making machine?
That costs you money.
Yeah, it's weird that we would accept anything like that.
Ray Anderson is the founder and chairman of Interface, the world's largest manufacturer of modular carpet. He has also written Confessions of a Radical Industrialist. For more than 15 years, he and his company have been climbing Mount Sustainability. Contrary to traditional economic theory, he says there are billions of dollars laying around unclaimed because business people refuse to break out of their rut and cooperate with nature. This isn't theory for Ray Anderson. He has the company to prove it. Bill Russell and I talked with Ray Anderson when he first embarked on his journey. We were pleased to get an update.
Ray Anderson, I am often approached by people who say, well, what you do might matter, but I can't do anything, and what I do doesn't matter, and what can one person do? And yeah, people like Ray Anderson, they're big company. But reading Confessions of a Radical Industrialist, excuse me, one person asked one person, I'm just a customer, but what's Interface doing? One person gave her mom a book. Who gave it to you? One person led a company. But isn't that some of the overall lesson of this whole Mount Sustainability, mm-hmm. The big picture? Isn't this every one of us has to do something?
The power of one.
Yeah.
And one, and one, and one, and one.
I can count that high. I know that you have now told the spear in the chest story at least 1,500 times in speeches and things. Doesn't that stay fresh with you every day that you wake up to think about these things? Isn't that still a real driving force?
The point of the spear is still a fresh sensation, and it's still there. Can you see
the spreading
the spear in the chest? Yeah.
And the spear is to more than your heart. The spear is really to the planet, isn't it?
Well, the spear I felt was in my own heart, and it was a convicting experience more than anything else.
Convicting like conviction?
Convicted as a plunderer of the earth, right?
Say more about that, because not everybody knows this story. You're your basic successful industrialist with all that goes with that in a notoriously nasty industry, carpet making. And you had built a successful company, and one day something happened. A spear was introduced into your life.
Yeah, the question came from a customer, what's your company doing for the environment? And we had no answers. That was the really embarrassing thing. And there was this guy who was the environmental consultant to the Southern California Gas Company in Downey, California, where they were building this green demonstration building, and our salespeople were pursuing the carpet order for the green demonstration building, and kept running into this consultant. And finally, he said to our sales manager, "The interface just doesn't get it." That got back to me, and so helped me. My response was, "Interface doesn't get what?"
QED.
Rather confirming the consultant's idea, his point of view, and then this question that kept coming: "What's your company doing for the environment?" And then a group in our company said, "Look, our salespeople have to have an answer. What are we doing? Let's get us a task force together and let's see what we're doing." By this time, Interface is 21 years old. It's global now in its scope, and let's bring our people from around the world and see what we're doing, get some answers. And they came to me with the idea of the task force. I said, "Great, go for it." And they said, "Well, we think you," talking to me, "ought to address this task force, and you ought to launch it with an environmental vision, and your environmental vision." Well, I didn't have an environmental vision. I didn't want to make that speech, that kickoff speech to that task force. And I hemmed, I hawed, I dragged my feet. They stayed on my case. Finally, I relented. I agreed to speak. The date was set, August 31, 1994. Come the middle of August, I have not a clue as to what to say. I've heard this interface doesn't get it, and responded interface doesn't get what. That tells you just exactly where I was. And I could not get beyond we obey the law, that's comply. But I knew that was not a vision.
That might be a little tough to sell for what it is.
And I did not have a clue what to say. And there I'm sweating, and it's a propitious moment. It's a teachable moment, you might say. In Hawken's book, Paul Hawken's book, lands on my desk. The Ecology of Commerce. I've never heard of Paul Hawken. I don't know this book. And I picked it up sort of idly, the way you do a new book, and was thumbing through it. And
there is this speech that is looming.
Yeah, it's looming there. And it's just a couple of weeks away. And here's this, page 19, a chapter heading, "The Death of Birth." Whoa, what is that? And I began to read, and I was drawn into the book instantly, and learned quickly, of course, the death of birth refers to species extinction, species disappearing into extinction, never again to experience the miracle of birth. And that was the point of the spear. And I read on. And I came to Hawken's central point really fairly quickly, and it was that in 3 parts: the living systems, the life support systems of the earth are in decline. The biosphere is in decline. This supports all of life on earth, including us. The biggest culprit in this decline is the industrial system. It's the way we make stuff, the take, make, waste industrial system, digging up the earth, converting it to products that end up as waste in landfills or incinerators. This linear take, make, waste industrial system. That was described my company precisely.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. And then he goes on to say there's only one institution on earth that is large enough and powerful enough and pervasive enough and wealthy enough to really change all that. And it's the same institution that's doing the damage, the institution of business and industry. Well, that's my institution. And the spear went, boom, all the way in. And I was convicted, right there as this plunderer of the earth, digging up the earth, converting it to products that end up as waste in a landfill 10 or 20 years later. And we've long since forgotten, about making that stuff.
There's an old saying that there's nothing like a hanging to concentrate the mind, particularly if it's your hanging. And in some ways, that's what you're describing with your having to give the speech, but also with respect to your company. But it also seems more generally to be the challenge that we're faced with in our community, particularly in the industrialized world and the industrializing world. We're faced with a serious hanging, our own, and yet people have been remarkably slow. The people in industry, the people in your position, have been remarkably slow to acknowledge what's going on, and then to take the kinds of steps that you've taken.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I think we're we're stuck with the normal distribution, that bell-shaped curve, and at one end of that you have the early movers, and behind them the fast followers. At the other end of the curve is the never movers. They're the people that the regulatory system is there to keep prodding along. And in the middle, the vast middle ground is, and you don't have mainstream until the vast middle ground moves. And we're still in the early mover, fast follower stage. Maybe a few willing followers who are trying to figure it out, but we aren't anywhere near mainstream with this revolution.
One of the leaders of this revolution, we'll come back in a moment talking about the next industrial revolution, that would be revolution, is Ray Anderson, who has graced us with his presence. Be with us, we'll be back in just a moment.